Let's give our praises to the Most High, whose true name in the ancient Hebrew is Yahweh, in the name of his only begotten Son, whose true name in the ancient Hebrew is Yahweh Shai, and the Holy Spirit, which in the ancient Hebrew is the Rakakwadash. Double honors to the elders, the GMS, who taught us this truth by the Holy Spirit. Honors to the brothers risking their life and freedom to push the gospel. Peace and blessings to the elect, which will be the so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, and Seminole Indians, who make up the lost 12 tribes of Israel, according to scripture and according to prophecy. But the elect will consist of so-called, would be one third of the Israelites who are returning back to the Most High during these last days, which is happening now, to receive salvation. While the two-thirds of Israel who don't turn back to the Most High be destroyed with America. And that's all according to prophecy. But we back with another lesson through the mercy of Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shah. Lesson is going to be titled The U.S. to Prioritize Denaturalization. Again, the U.S. to prioritize denaturalization, revoking U.S. citizenship. Yeah, revoking U.S. citizenship. So I heard Cat Williams say one of his old stand-ups years ago that he saw even the white man use terms and words that we can identify with. They use words that the people not familiar with to throw people off. Because you're not familiar with these words, they go in one ear out the other. You might not pay no attention or you can't remember it, but that's so he can get over on the people. And again, the title of the lesson, the U.S. to prioritize denaturalization. So we're going to now look at what this word means. But we're going to start with naturalization. Let's start there. Naturalization is the process of becoming a U.S. citizen if you were born outside of the United States. So that's what naturalization is. Foreigners come to America, get their citizenship. Denaturalization is the opposite. Denaturalization is a legal process of stripping an individual of their U.S. citizenship after it was previously granted through naturalization. It's essentially the revocation of citizenship that can only occur through a court order following a legal process. So yeah, if they can prove you're guilty of certain crimes, um, they can take your U.S. citizenship. You know, for foreigners who come over here and get their citizenship, they're guilty of the wrong crime, it can be taken away. So that's all cool, but the thing is, when this whole thing started, Trump said that he was going to clean up the streets of America. He was going to go after all the criminals, all the undocumented immigrant criminals, and he went after everybody except the criminals. He's deporting women, children, entire families, people who work, people who go to school, people out here just trying to make an honest living. They're the people he's been deporting. And the thing is, it was never about cleaning up the streets of America. It was never about getting the criminals out. And I said this on previous lessons. This is a war against the 12 tribes. So-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans. Started with the so-called Latinos first, Native Americans in there a little bit, and he's making his way to the so-called Negroes. Again, it's a war against the 12 tribes. But, and if you, and another thing I heard the Edomite say, the target never goes away. The target just moves to different groups of people. So if you look at what this is trending towards, the talk was they're going to get, illegal immigrants, undocumented immigrants. That started. Now, who's the target? Because what's the lesson? They're going to prioritize denaturalization. So they moving from undocumented immigrants to immigrants who now have U.S. citizenship. It's not going to stop there. They're going to make their way to actual U.S. citizens next. People who were born here. That's what it's trending towards. That's what it's trending towards. And then who do you think they're going to target with that? Actual American citizens who were born here, you so-called Negroes. Because we have citizenship here through birthright citizenship. I believe that's the 14th Amendment. We got rights here because we was born here. And they already got it figured out how they can take it away. They already figured out how to strip you of your 14th Amendment. So we're going to talk about how they want to denaturalize, revoke citizenship from people who earn it. And it's pretty much going to be through crime. If they're guilty of certain crimes, they can have their hard-earned citizenship revoked. And it's going to be the same when they come after actual U.S. citizens. Through the 14th Amendment and birthright citizenship. And we're going to show it at the end of the video. That pretty much, even if you, as a natural-born U.S. citizen, is guilty of certain crimes, hey, they can find a way to make you no longer a citizen, to deport you, or do whatever they please with you. So we're going to start with this first video. And you see the title, DOJ, Department of Justice, to prioritize revoking U.S. citizenship for naturalized Americans. Foreigners who work hard to earn a citizenship. Why they the target? We thought they wanted the criminals. And to become naturalized, to get your U.S. citizenship, you got to be in good standing over here in America. They got to take history classes. They got to read. They got to study. They got to know certain things. They pretty much, for the most part, got to have a clean record. Nothing too serious. They got to have job, address, all kind of stuff. So if the goal is to clean the streets of America, to make America safe, to make America great again, what you going after naturalized Americans for? Because again, it's not about getting the criminals out. They're going after the 12 tribes. And then again, you see how it's trending. From the undocumented immigrants to now naturalized immigrants. Immigrants who earned their citizenship. Again, natural-born U.S. citizens are next. Those of us who were born here. But check this out.
As the Trump administration boosts its immigration enforcement, the Department of Justice is issuing a directive now aimed at naturalized citizens who commit certain crimes.
Yeah, the move is raising concerns and some fears within the immigrant community. NBC4's Hetty Ching live in Santa Ana with reaction from some immigration advocates. Hetty.
Michael and Colleen, advocates say they fear this would create sort of a two-tiered system. On the one hand, you have U.S. citizens who were born here. On the other hand, you have naturalized citizens who may now have to live in fear. In this June memo, the U.S. Justice Department directing its attorneys to prioritize denaturalizing or stripping away citizenship for naturalized Americans who commit certain crimes, ranging from fraud to war crimes.
I think really what this means is the Department of Justice is prioritizing potentially stripping naturalized citizens of their citizenship in a way that we haven't seen in the past, and is doing so potentially on a much broader scale.
Loyola law professor Jessica Levinson says denaturalization is rare in recent U.S. history, and when it was used, it was sparingly for very specific cases.
Oftentimes, it's based on lying to say that you were eligible to be a citizen at all, or committing some sort of fraud prior to becoming a naturalized citizen. There's more crimes that are listed that would qualify for stripping people of their citizenship.
The list in the memo includes people who engage in torture, human rights violations, and those who further the enterprise of criminal gangs. Also, those who committed fraud, including fraud of the Paycheck Protection Program or the PPP loan program.
So those are crimes, traditionally they would take your citizenship for. Espionage, treason, you're a spy for another country, you a warlord, torture, human rights violator. Usually war crimes, but they say fraud too, and they mention the PPP loan, and we know how guilty a lot of our people are of that PPP loan fraud. Hey, they're gonna use that against you, but the point is they're using crime to come after naturalized Americans, meaning foreigners who earned their citizenship here. And the thing is, they're adding more crimes to the list, giving them more reason to denaturalize these people, meaning more crimes to the list, giving them, more reason to take away people's hard-earned citizenship.
Listed any other cases referred to the civil division that the division determines to be sufficiently important to pursue. The language critics say is both broad.
That's about it. But we're gonna start here, Isaiah. Matter of fact, we gonna continue to the next video. But yeah, man, they trying to prioritize revoking of U.S. citizenship. So check out this next video. U.S. citizens could lose citizenship over DUI. So that's another crime that's added to the list. Yeah, you got a DUI. Hey, expect to be deported. But it's a twist to it. We're gonna get into what that twist is after the video.
Here's what you need to know. H.R. 875, one DUI and you're out. The House just passed H.R. 875, a bill that redefines how immigration treats DUI offenses, and it's aggressive. Under this bill, any DUI offense, whether it's a misdemeanor or a felony, could make someone both inadmissible and deportable. That includes people who were never convicted or who only admitted to driving under the influence. Even old or expunged cases are covered. What makes this bill especially broad is that it allows state and local jurisdictions to define what DUI means. So if your state has looser or broader DUI classifications, those definitions still count under federal immigration law. This would impact a huge range of people: green card holders, visa applicants, even people applying for naturalization. It also applies to drug-related DUIs, not just alcohol.
So yeah, a DUI, you could be deported, you could use your citizenship. This ain't just limited to drinking and driving. Air quality is bad, allergies are horrible. So if you take some Benadryl because you're sick and you out handling business because you gotta handle business and you get caught driving while on Benadryl or any other kind of medicine with similar effects, hey, you could lose your citizenship and be deported, all because you driving around on some Benadryl or some Tylenol, trying to make it happen. You'd be deported. But I guess that's the first twist. But check this out.
The bill passed the House with a vote of 246 to 160. It's now headed to the Senate, and if it passes, President Trump is expected to sign it immediately. That could turn an old, minor mistake into a deportation order. Yes, you can lose your U.S. citizenship. This next part is just as alarming. Even U.S. citizens aren't safe under the latest enforcement priorities. On June 11th, the Department of Justice's Civil Division issued a memo making denaturalization one of its top 5 enforcement goals.
So again, the title of the lesson, the U.S. to prioritize denaturalization. Before that, the priority was undocumented immigrants. The new priority, the new target is naturalized Americans, foreigners who came here and earned their citizenship. And when you follow the trend, who's next? Um, American citizens who were born here. So they have birthright citizenship. We next. But let's continue here.
That means the federal government is actively seeking to strip people of citizenship they've already earned. This isn't criminal court, it's civil court, which means you don't get a public defender. The government doesn't have to meet a high standard of proof. It's faster and easier for them to win.
So, yeah, let's deal with that.
Standard of proof. It's faster.
So this is the book of Isaiah, chapter 10, verse 1 through 2 in the NLT. What sorrow awaits the unjust judges and those who issue unfair laws. So this is an unfair law. You know, prioritizing of denaturalizing people, you know, for not serious crimes. I'm not talking about DUI, you know, but some of the other crimes that we're going to read about in a minute. And the thing is, it's unfair because these people earned their citizenship to be treated as a U.S. citizen. These people go through a lot of trouble. They spend a lot of money to get their U.S. citizenship. So if they get in trouble with the law, they should be handled like a U.S. citizen. But that's why when we go down, it says they deprive the poor of justice. See, they want to deprive you of justice. Because that's why when it says, you know, this isn't criminal court, it's civil court, which means you don't get a public defender. The government doesn't have to meet a high standard of proof. So they don't even really need to prove you did it. If they got just a little bit of something to hold against you, they can take away your citizenship and deport you. And the reason they want to take away your citizenship because if you're no longer considered a citizen, you don't have no rights here. Like the Constitution, the amendments, those only apply to U.S. citizens. So if they take away your citizenship, now you have no rights. Now they can handle you how they want to handle you. That's why I say they deprive the poor of justice and deny the rights of the needy among my people. So yeah, they want to take away your rights, and they do that through revoking your citizenship. They prey on widows and take advantage of orphans, and we the widow and the orphan of people that's taken advantage of on every level. But yeah, woe to the judges who issue unfair laws. Because again, these people go through a lot of trouble and a lot of money to become U.S. citizens. And if they get in trouble, they should be handled as U.S. citizens, not less than. So let's continue.
Easier for them to win. The DOJ is now prioritizing cases where people may have committed crimes before naturalization but didn't disclose them, gained citizenship through false information or misrepresentation, been tied to fraud, human trafficking, or national security threats, committed felonies that were missed during the naturalization process. Even if the crime happened decades ago or was never prosecuted, The DOJ can still go after your citizenship if it wasn't disclosed properly.
Yeah, so even if the crime happened, 5, 10, 15 years ago, and you can still have your citizenship revoked. It don't just have to be a felony, because on the previous video, it said even a misdemeanor, even if you wasn't prosecuted. So yeah, imagine that you get your citizenship just for them to look back, 10, 15, 20 years and say, hold up. But see, that's why the scriptures say, where sorrow awaits unjust judges, those who issue unfair laws. Because these devils know everything anyway, you know. If you're guilty of a crime and they miss it, that's their fault. But that's why the scripture here, Sirach 12 and 10, it say never trust thine enemy. For like as iron rusteth, so his wickedness. So yeah, never trust your enemy. They want to give you your citizenship just so they can target you later and use it against you. And they gonna find all kind of petty crimes to declare you guilty and say your citizenship should be removed. But yeah, never trust thine enemy. Now we gonna read a little bit of this article that I got. It says Department of Justice using past tax mistakes to strip U.S. citizenship. Because remember, certain types of fraud, war crimes, crimes against humanity, against human rights, that'll get your citizenship taken. Now you got DUI. Another one to the list. If you make tax mistakes, who don't make mistakes on their taxes? But let's continue. A single unreported tax form from years ago could be grounds to strip someone of U.S. citizenship. The DOJ has established denaturalization as one of its 5 enforcement priorities. To prioritize maximally pursue denaturalization proceedings in all cases permitted by law and supported by evidence. Okay, let's get this. June 11th, Assistant Attorney General Brett Shumate outlines 10 categories of cases for U.S. citizenship revocation, extending well beyond the traditional focus on war criminals and national security threats. So yeah, they're adding more crimes to the list for grounds of having your citizenship taken away. Because traditionally it was, war crimes, national security threats. The new priorities notably include financial fraud against the United States, explicitly listing tax violations alongside Medicare and the PPP loan. Now, these crimes, U.S. citizens do these regularly. These ain't even serious crimes, like war crimes, national security. Yeah, if you do these, you can have your citizenship taken. Now, Americans do this on purpose all the time, but it's easy for somebody to make a mistake on this type of stuff. And even if it's a mistake, they're going to consider it a fraud. Okay, and that's fraud. Okay, your citizenship is going to be taken away. The memo also targets fraud against private individuals, funds, or corporations. So this ain't even got to be fraud against the government, but any corporation, any business, any person, marking a radical expansion from historical practice where authorities reserve denaturalization for Nazi war criminals, spies, and terrorists. So you making a mistake on your paperwork, they pretty much gonna treat you like a terrorist. But that's what the Lord said in Isaiah 10:1 was sorrow wastes unjust judges, those who issue unfair laws. They deprive the poor of justice and deny the rights of the needy among my people. So they're gonna treat you like a terrorist because you made some mistake on some paperwork. And then a lot of people, yeah, they may come over here, get their citizenship. Hey, but these people, making mistakes. They still learning the system. They still learning how things work. It's easy to mess up on your paperwork. IRS find mistakes on paperwork all the time. Because you made a mistake, they're gonna consider it fraud, try to take away your citizenship. But it don't stop there. It ain't just fraud against corporations, individuals, and war crimes and stuff like that. But there's other things you can add to the list is anti-Semitism. We know that's a big one. That's a growing one. Yeah, so anti-Semitism can get you deported. As a naturalized American or foreigner who earned a citizenship. Now let me see if I can find it. Yeah, the memo positions denaturalization within broader administration priorities, including ending illegal discrimination and combating anti Semitism, connecting each to potential citizenship revocation. So, yeah, even anti Semitism can get your U.S. citizenship stripped away. So, we going to get this in the book of Psalms, chapter 73, verse 5. They are not in trouble as other men, neither are they plagued like other men. We read this in the NLT. It reads, they don't have the same troubles that other men have. Who is we talking about? Esau, Edom, the so-called white man. Why? Because of that white privilege. Hey, but the opposite is also true for us. God says they are not in trouble as other men, and they can go both ways. Because us as a people, hey, we troubled. Ain't nobody troubled like we are. Ain't nobody troubled like we are. And that's why this is Isaiah 42, verse 22. I'm going to get it in the NLT. But his own people, the 12 tribes, Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, have been robbed and plundered, enslaved and imprisoned and trapped. America's a big trap. Policies always changing, the laws always changing. Because what they want to do, they want to imprison you. And then when you're in prison, that's pretty much modern day slavery. They get free labor out of you. But yeah, these are people that's been robbed, plundered, enslaved, imprisoned, and trapped. They are fair game for anyone and have no one to protect them. Yeah, you got nobody to protect you here. Because they said, naturalized Americans, that you can even lose access to a lawyer or a judge. And then, if they can take away your citizenship, declare you not a citizen, you have no rights anyway. So yeah, literally nobody to protect you. And no one to take them back home. Yep. Which in the KJV, it says no one who say restore. So nobody's, sticking up for the 12 tribes to help us, to protect us, to defend us. nobody to speak up for us. Now I'm gonna get this last video because again, just the whole purpose of this video is to show that they're gonna use different crimes to start targeting um, foreigners who came to America and earned their citizenship. Now, what population of people comes over here? What's the highest population of people to come over here and get their citizenship? It'll be the so-called Mexicans. So anytime they talk about illegal immigrants, naturalized Americans, the people they have in mind will be the Northern Kingdom, so-called Mexicans. Yeah, Chinese, Indians, and Arabs and other people come over here and get citizenship, but America's not worried about them. And then even deporting people for DUI. I don't know the statistics, but if I had to guess, I think most DUIs would probably be blacks, whites, so-called Mexicans, so-called Native Americans. Because for the most part, Chinese, Japanese, Arabs, East Indians, they come to America, they stick to themselves. But so-called Mexicans, along with the so-called blacks, so-called whites, they do American things. They get drunk, they fight, they get DUIs. So even with that, targeting people for citizenship based on DUIs, that's already racist in a sense. But yeah, the trend is they're gonna go from undocumented immigrants to immigrants who earned their citizenship to straight up American citizens. That's the next target. Now check this video out.
The very next day, Trump said that he and his administration were actively studying the ideal of deporting American citizens.
See that? Studying on how to deport U.S. citizens. Matter of fact, let me grab this real quick.
Did it himself. So let's watch that clip.
But we also have a lot of bad people that have been here for a long time. People that whack people over the head with a baseball bat from behind when they're not looking and kill them. People that knife you when you're walking down the street. They're not new to our country. They're old to our country. Many of them were born in our country.
Right? He said many of them were born in our country, but make sure what? A U.S. citizen through birthright citizenship, 14th Amendment. So he's telling you who the next target is. He just ain't made his way to that target yet. He inching closer and closer to deporting and denaturalizing, meaning taking away your citizenship of U.S. citizens, which has always been a target because who's the prize? Who is he after? Again, it's the 12 tribes. But the so-called Negroes, hey, most of us were born here. So-called Native Americans, they were all born here. So you got to come at the 12 tribes from different angles. Dealing with the so-called Mexicans and most of the Northern Kingdom, a lot of them undocumented. So that's easy to get over on them. You can say, hey, you're not supposed to be here. Now, the other half of the Northern Kingdom, they got citizenship. They were naturalized. They came over here and earned it. So what does he have to do? He got to tweak the laws. Reasons that will get your citizenship took, he got to add more to the list. Now they got more reasons, petty crimes that can get your citizenship took. Petty crimes that the average American do every day. Again, you'll come after the 12 tribes, but you got to do it from different angles. Now the so-called Negroes, Native Americans, that most of us were born here. during colonization, through that era. So he's gonna need a way to come after us, and what he's gonna use, being guilty of violent crimes, certain crimes like PPP loan fraud, and whatever else. But let me get back to this video.
We ought to get them the hell out of here too. You want to know the truth. So maybe that'll be the next job that we'll work on together. New to our country, they're old to our country. Many of them were born in our country. I think we ought to get them the hell out.
He and his administration were actively studying the ideal of deporting American citizens. He said it himself. So let's watch that clip.
But we also have a lot of bad people that have been here for a long time. People that whack people over the head with a baseball bat from behind when they're not looking and kill them. People that knife you when you're walking down the street. They're not new to our country. They're old to our country. Many of them were born in our country. I think we ought to get them the hell out of here too. You want to know the truth. So maybe that'll be the next job that we'll work on together. But getting them out, we forget about them. We had some bad accidents in New York. And they're not accidents. They were done very much on purpose. People being pushed into a subway just before it arrives, going 40 miles an hour. And they're 10 feet away from where the thing is, you get pushed right into the face of the subway train, get whacked and killed. These are sick people. I'd like to get them out of here too.
Now notice, he didn't say undocumented immigrants. He said American citizens. And to make it worse, he already said he would send so-called homegrown criminals to El Salvador. So what in the world are people thinking? The man has said several times on the record that he wants to deport American citizens.
So yeah, pretty much ended there. But the whole reason of doing this video is to show that the target is moving away from undocumented immigrants, which they're gonna always be part of that target. But now they want to prioritize people who've came here and earned their citizenship, and people who earned their citizenship, meaning you so-called Mexicans. You're not concerned with the Chinese, the East Indians, and the Arabs. This is a war against the 12 tribes. And after they come against people who've earned their citizenship, they want to come after the people who were born here. That's why Trump said that's going to be the next job, getting the people who were born here to get them up out of the country. And they can't just get you up out of the country without first changing the laws in a way that can strip you of your citizenship. Because once they do, now you have no rights. They can do what they want to do to you, pretty much. Lord, what it does, informative, edifying. Till next time, Shalom.